She saw me fighting alone. The alien Empress wouldn't let me die. Elias Varric crouched behind a jagged rock formation, his pulse hammering in his chest. The air of Krythos 9 was thin and bitter, full of dust and the metallic tang of the planet's mining waste. Above him, the sky glowed a dull orange, streaked with dark clouds of ash. This was no ordinary battlefield. This was survival against impossible odds. The scavengers were closing in. Their limbs were spindly, covered in chitinous armor that glimmered under Krythos 9 dim sunlight. Their eyes, black and reflective, followed every movement Elias made. He could hear their shrill calls as they communicated, a strange, clicking language that no human tongue could mimic. Elias took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had been trained for tough situations, yes, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Alone, stranded, and outnumbered, he had to rely on his wits and instincts. He tightened his grip on the makeshift plasma pistol in his hands. It was a crude weapon, salvaged from an abandoned mining outpost, but it would have to do. He darted from his cover and fired. The weapon hissed, sending a blue pulse into the air. One scavenger screeched and fell back, but 3 more advanced creatures advanced without hesitation. Elias gritted his teeth. Every movement had to count. One wrong step and he would be overrun. He ducked behind a pile of twisted metal debris, catching his breath. His mind raced, calculating the next move. He needed a strategy. Raw strength alone wouldn't save him here. He looked around, noting the jagged cliffs, the mining machines left to rust, the deep crevices that could serve as traps. Every scrap of the environment could be a weapon if he was clever enough. He set his plan into motion. Using a piece of scrap metal as a lure, he led 2 scavengers toward a narrow crevice. They followed blindly, clicking and shrieking, until they were wedged tight against the jagged rock. He pressed a small charge he had prepared earlier, and the creatures were thrown backward by a controlled explosion. Elias allowed himself a short sigh of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. More scavengers appeared on the horizon, their numbers growing faster than he could count. He ran toward an abandoned mining shaft, hoping to find higher ground. The shaft was dark, filled with the smell of rust and decay, but it offered cover. He climbed a ladder, ignoring the ache in his arms, and reached the top just as the first of the scavengers entered the shaft below. From above, he had a better view. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. There were at least 50 scavengers now, converging from multiple directions. Elias realized that survival alone might not be enough. He needed intervention, a miracle, and then he saw it. At first, it was just a shadow in the sky, a shimmer of silver and blue moving with impossible speed. Elias blinked, convinced he was hallucinating from exhaustion. But the shadow grew larger, materializing into a massive ship hovering above the battlefield. Its design was unlike anything he had seen, a blend of elegance and raw power. The hull pulsed with energy and strange symbols glowed along its surface. Elias' heart leapt. Something was here. The scavengers froze, their clicks turning into panicked cries. A sudden beam of energy streaked from the ship, cutting through the battlefield with precision. Entire groups of scavengers were thrown aside, their bodies skidding across the rocky ground. Dust and smoke filled the air as the humans and aliens alike struggled to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Elias couldn't move at first. He had never seen technology like this, never faced a being so powerful. The ship descended further, revealing its occupant, the alien Empress Thalrin herself. She floated in the center of the command chamber, her form tall and regal, with skin that shimmered like liquid metal and eyes that glowed faintly purple. Her presence alone seemed to bend the air, an aura of authority and strength that made the scavengers cower. Without a word, Thalrin extended her hand, and another pulse of energy erupted, scattering the remaining scavengers. Elias watched, mesmerized. He had expected an ally to be another human or a fellow soldier, but this was something else entirely, a being of unimaginable power who had intervened in the most improbable moment. As the dust settled, Thalrin's gaze fell on him. Elias felt a strange weight in her stare, as if she could see everything about him, fear, determination, exhaustion, and a spark that no one else had noticed. He realized that this moment, his survival, was no longer just about luck. Someone powerful had taken notice. Elias approached cautiously, still clutching his plasma pistol. Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I am Thalrin," she said, her voice calm but commanding, echoing with authority. I have watched you fight. You should have died long ago. Elias blinked. Then why didn't you let me? She studied him, tilting her head slightly. Because you are interesting. Most creatures are predictable. You are not. Elias wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or uneasy. The last thing he needed was to become a pawn in someone else's plan. But the exhaustion in his body reminded him that he had no choice. She had saved him. Do you expect me to thank you? Elias asked, trying to mask his uncertainty with sarcasm. Thalrin's eyes glowed brighter. I expect you to survive, that is all. The words were simple, but Elias felt the weight behind them. Survival, his constant battle, was being acknowledged by a being far beyond human comprehension. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a sliver of hope. The scavengers had been defeated, but Krythos 9 was still dangerous. The Empress did not linger. With a graceful motion, she lifted off from the ground, ascending back to her ship. Elias watched her disappear into the sky, feeling a mix of awe and confusion. He knew one thing: he was no longer just a human fighting alone on a barren planet. Something had changed. Someone had seen him, not just as a weak species, but as a being capable of ingenuity, courage, and defiance. Elias slumped against the rocks, catching his breath. He had survived the impossible, but the feeling of unease lingered. Who or what was this Empress? And why had she saved him? Above, the massive ship moved like a silent predator, its lights scanning the horizon. Somewhere inside, Thalrin considered him. Elias didn't know it yet, but his life was about to become entwined with the fate of a galaxy far larger and more dangerous than Krythos 9. For now, though, he had to focus on the immediate threat: survival. The scavengers might be gone for now, but Krythos 9 had other dangers: treacherous cliffs, deadly wildlife, and the harsh environment itself. Every moment was a challenge, every step a gamble. Elias rose to his feet, eyes scanning the horizon. He might be alone, but he was not defeated. Humans had a strange way of surviving where others could not, and he would prove it. He would fight. He would adapt, and somehow, against all odds, he would endure. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Elias clenched his fists and started moving, a determined figure against the vast, hostile world. He was alone, yes, but no longer invisible. Somewhere out there, the alien Empress had seen him. And that was a start. The sun had dipped behind the jagged peaks of Krythos 9, leaving the planet in a dim, eerie twilight. Elias Varric moved cautiously, keeping low behind rock formations, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger. His muscles ached, his lungs burned, and yet he kept moving. Survival on Krythos 9 demanded constant alertness. Every shadow could hide a threat, every sound might signal a predator or scavenger waiting to strike. He paused for a moment, leaning on his plasma pistol, listening to the strange wind that howled across the rocky wasteland. The air tasted of iron and dust. Even after the battle earlier, the planet seemed alive with danger, as if it resented intruders. Elias knew he had to find shelter for the night or risk becoming prey to more scavengers or worse. Then in the far distance he saw movement, a ripple across the barren landscape. He froze, instincts kicking in. His eyes narrowed. The scavengers or something entirely new? Before he could decide, a sudden flash of brilliant blue light cut across the horizon. Elias dropped to the ground, shielding his eyes. The light wasn't from the sun. It was deliberate, controlled, and terrifyingly precise. He could hear a distant roar, like thunder amplified 1,000 times. Elias' heart raced. His instincts screamed danger, but this wasn't any ordinary threat. He looked up and saw the massive silhouette of the alien ship hovering above the rocky plains again. Its hull gleamed under Krythos 9 dim twilight, pulsing with energy that seemed alive. "Impossible," he whispered, unable to look away. Then the beam struck, not the scavengers this time, it struck the terrain. Rocks and debris exploded outward as the ship fired again, creating a barrier of light and energy that sent Elias tumbling back. The shockwave knocked him off his feet, but when he scrambled up, he saw what had happened. The scavengers had been thrown into disarray. Some had been blasted far across the plains, others simply fled in panic. And then she appeared. Thalrin descended from the ship in a shimmering aura of energy. Her form radiated authority and grace, her metallic skin reflecting the dim light like liquid silver. She moved with confidence, each step measured and deliberate as though the entire world bent to her will. Her eyes scanned the battlefield, landing finally on Elias. "You should not be here," she said, her voice calm but commanding. Every word seemed to echo across the plains, carrying a weight that made even the scavengers hesitate. Elias swallowed, unsure whether to speak. I survived, he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. I can take care of myself. Thalrin raised an eyebrow, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. You have survived so far, yes, but survival alone is not enough. You are outmatched, outnumbered, and fragile, yet you fight. That is unusual. Elias blinked. Fragile, he repeated, trying not to sound offended. I'm not fragile. I've gotten this far on my own. She studied him for a moment, and he felt her gaze pierce through him, reading more than he wished to reveal. You are human, she said finally, and humans are interesting. You fight with more than strength. You fight with creativity, courage, and something I have not seen in most creatures, defiance against impossible odds. Elias didn't know how to respond. He had survived by improvisation, by thinking differently from the scavengers or other life forms. That this alien, this Empress, had noticed was unsettling, and yet oddly comforting. Before he could say more, another wave of scavengers appeared, their numbers seemingly endless. Elias raised his plasma pistol, preparing for another fight, but Thalrin moved first. She extended her hand, and the air shimmered around her. A wave of energy shot forth, a barrier of pure force that slammed into the advancing scavengers, sending them tumbling backward. Elias stared, mouth open. Even the most sophisticated human weapons could not do this. Thalrin's power was absolute, precise, and terrifying. The scavengers that remained turned and fled into the darkness, leaving the plains eerily silent. Enough, Thalrin said, her voice softening slightly as she turned to Elias. You are alive because I chose it. Do not waste this second chance. Elias blinked, suddenly overwhelmed. You saved me. I did, she replied. I do not save most of your kind, but you intrigued me. I want to see what a human can do when spared death against impossible odds. The words were strange. Elias had always believed survival depended on himself, on his own skills and determination. To have someone like Thalrin acknowledge his worth was almost beyond comprehension. Why me? He asked quietly. Why not let me die like everyone else? Thalrin's eyes softened slightly, a faint shimmer of curiosity in their glow. Because I see something in you, something others overlook. You are clever, you adapt, you survive, and in the chaos of the universe that is rare. Elias swallowed. He had always prided himself on his instincts and courage, but no one, not his commanders, not his training instructors, had ever described him this way. And yet, standing before the alien Empress, he felt a strange validation, a spark of hope that had nothing to do with luck. Look, he said, pointing toward the horizon, I appreciate the rescue, really, but I'm not sure I want to be indebted to someone like you. Thalrin tilted her head, her expression unreadable. You misunderstand. I do not ask for debt. I ask for observation. I want to see what you can do. If you survive, it is because of yourself, but I will intervene when necessary. Do you understand? Elias nodded slowly. I think so. You'll help me if I'm overwhelmed. Perhaps, she said simply, her gaze returning to the battlefield. Perhaps not. That is not for you to decide. But know this, I will not let you die today. For a moment, silence fell over Krythos 9. The planet seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the strange bond forming between a human and an alien Empress. Elias realized that things had changed forever. He was no longer just a survivor on a harsh planet. He was now a participant in something far larger, something that could ripple across the galaxy. Then I suppose, thank you, he said, unsure if the words were enough. Thalrin inclined her head. Do not thank me. Survive, that is enough. Elias moved cautiously, glancing at the distant horizon. He knew the night would bring more dangers, creatures that thrived in darkness, environmental hazards, and perhaps other scavengers drawn to the chaos. But for the first time in days, he felt a flicker of confidence. He was not entirely alone. As he made his way toward a safer position, Thalrin rose into the air, her ship hovering silently above. She observed him, her luminous eyes following his every step. Elias could feel her presence like a shadow at the edge of his consciousness, distant but undeniable. He paused on a ridge, looking back at the plains below. The scorched earth and scattered bodies told a story of survival, ingenuity, and defiance. He thought of how he had fought, improvising weapons from scraps, using the terrain to his advantage, and refusing to give up despite overwhelming odds. And now, someone powerful had noticed. Someone who could change the course of his life forever. Elias shook his head, trying to focus. There was work to do, shelter to find, threats to avoid, and plans to make. The night was long and Krithos 9 was unforgiving, but he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a strange sense of purpose. He didn't yet know why Thalrin had saved him, nor what her ultimate intentions were. But he knew one thing: the human capacity to survive, to adapt, and to fight against impossible odds had earned him more than just life. It had earned him attention from a being far beyond comprehension. And in the depths of the alien eyes that watched him, Elias caught a glimpse of something unusual: curiosity, respect, perhaps even admiration. For the first time, he realized that survival wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about proving worth, about showing that humans, fragile, unpredictable, and clever, could matter in a galaxy that often dismissed them as weak. Elias took a deep breath, letting the cold night air fill his lungs. The scavengers were gone for now. The night stretched ahead, full of danger and uncertainty. But somewhere above, the alien Empress had seen him, and that gave him a spark of hope, a spark he intended to protect, no matter the cost. He moved forward into the darkness, a lone human against a world of peril, yet watched by eyes that would change his fate forever. The first light of Krithos' 9 twin suns barely touched the jagged horizon when Elias Varric found himself at the base of a hovering starship. It was the same ship that had saved him the night before, massive, shimmering, and impossibly advanced. The air around it buzzed with energy, a low hum that vibrated in his chest. He had no choice but to approach. A ramp extended from the ship, and as he climbed, Elias felt the cold metal under his hands. His heart pounded not from fear but anticipation. Everything about this place, the ship, the energy, the alien technology, was overwhelming. And yet there was a strange sense of purpose in his chest, a whisper that perhaps his life had meaning beyond mere survival. Inside, the ship was even more astounding. The walls shimmered with a soft, blue light that seemed alive, and consoles lined with symbols he could not read pulsed with energy. Aliens of various shapes and sizes moved gracefully, speaking in tones that Elias could not understand. They glanced at him with curiosity, their movements precise, efficient, and confident. And then she appeared. Thalrin, the alien Empress, stood at the far end of the chamber, her presence commanding every corner of the room. Her metallic skin glimmered in the light and her luminous eyes fixed on him. "You came," she said, her voice calm yet filled with authority. Elias swallowed. I didn't have much choice, did I?" "No," she said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "But you also came willingly." "That matters," he hesitated. "Look, I'm not used to working with aliens, especially not empresses who can destroy planets with a thought." Thalrin's lips curved into something resembling a smile. "And yet you survived despite knowing exactly that. Your courage and defiance are notable." Elias could feel a mixture of pride and unease. It was strange to be praised by a being so powerful, a creature whose existence made human achievements seem insignificant. Yet there was a spark of respect in her gaze that made him believe he was more than just a fragile human. "You are lucky," Thalrin said, stepping closer. "Most humans would have died in the first hours. You did not. That alone makes you interesting." Elias shifted on his feet. "Interesting enough to be what part of your empire?" "Perhaps," she said. "Perhaps more than that, you have qualities that my generals and scientists cannot fully understand. Humans adapt in ways that defy prediction. You are unpredictable, resourceful, and brave." "That is valuable," Elias frowned. "So what, you want me to join you? Fight your battles?" Thalrin's eyes gleamed. "Not blindly, you will have choice, but I am offering you protection, resources, and knowledge beyond what your world can give. In return, you will share your unique human perspective, your tactics, your ingenuity, your courage." Elias exhaled slowly. It was an offer he had never imagined. On one hand, he had survived alone for so long, relying only on himself. On the other, he had seen firsthand what this Empress could do. To refuse her might mean certain death in the battles to come. "I'm not sure I trust you," Elias admitted. "Not yet." "You will," she said simply. "Trust is not given lightly, it is earned. But consider this, the galaxy is changing. Forces beyond your comprehension move toward war, chaos, and destruction. Survival alone will not be enough. You can continue to fight alone, or you can learn to fight alongside me and perhaps change the outcome of what is coming." Elias looked down at his hands. His life on Krithos 9 had been about survival, day by day, step by step. But now he realized survival could mean something greater. It could mean being part of a fight that spanned stars, planets, and civilizations. "All right," he said finally. "I'll consider your offer, but I need to understand more. I'm not just going to blindly fight for someone I barely know." Thalrin nodded. "Fair enough. Observation first, trust later, that is wise." She led him deeper into the ship, past glowing corridors and chambers filled with advanced technology. Aliens moved with precision, their eyes on their tasks, but occasionally stealing glances at Elia's. He could sense their curiosity. Humans were rare, even in her empire. Few had the courage or skill to survive in hostile environments, and fewer still had the ingenuity to adapt under pressure. "You will begin with observation," Thalrin explained. "You will see our operations, learn how we prepare for conflict, and understand the resources at your disposal. Then, when ready, you will participate. You will be tested, not for punishment, but for understanding." Elias nodded, trying to absorb everything. He had seen battlefields, dangerous creatures, and impossible odds, but nothing had prepared him for this. A living, breathing civilization, so advanced that even the most complex human strategies seemed simple by comparison. Hours passed as he toured the ship. He watched alien engineers manipulate energy fields, soldiers train with weapons that bent space and time, and scholars analyze planets and stars as if they were mere puzzles. Everywhere he looked, there was precision, discipline, and raw power. Yet even among all this sophistication, Elias noticed something unusual. The aliens were predictable. Their strategies were calculated based on logic and probability. They rarely adapted on the fly. And that was where humans had an edge. Humans could improvise, think in unexpected ways, and take risks that others would never consider. "I see it in your eyes," Thalrin said suddenly, startling him. "You notice the patterns, you see where logic can fail, you understand where unpredictability becomes strength. That is why I saved you. That is why I am observing you. You may be the key to turning the tide in the conflicts to come." Elias blinked. "Me, just a human?" "You are human," she said. "And yet you are not ordinary. That combination is dangerous to our enemies. You survive because you are willing to defy expectation, to act differently, to take chances. That is a quality we need." He felt a surge of pride, tempered by caution. "And if I fail, if I can't adapt fast enough," Thalrin's gaze hardened, "then you learn. That is what humans do. You are resilient. You endure. Even failure teaches something valuable. That is why I am interested in humans. You never give up, even when every reason says you should." Elias nodded slowly. He had always survived on Krythos 9 by refusing to give up, by thinking differently than others. Now it seemed that very quality had made him valuable to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "All right," he said finally. "I'll join on my terms. I'll observe, learn, and then we'll see if I'm useful to your empire." Thalrin's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "Agreed. Observation first. You will begin training tomorrow. There are others in the empire who will test your abilities, your creativity, and your courage. Some will doubt you. That is natural. But remember this, I see what you are capable of. That is what matters." The rest of the day passed with Elias acclimating to the ship and its inhabitants. He met alien soldiers, engineers, and advisors, all of whom regarded him with a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and caution. He realized quickly that he would have to prove himself not through words, but through action. As night fell on Krythos 9, Elias stood by a viewport, looking out at the barren planet below. The winds had calmed, and the shadows of the jagged cliffs stretched long across the surface. He thought about the scavengers, the dangers he had faced alone, and the strange, powerful being who had saved him. He realized that survival had brought him to this point, but now something more was possible. He could learn, grow, and perhaps become part of something larger than himself. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. And somewhere above him, Thalrin watched. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, followed his every move. She had made a choice to intervene, to observe, and to test the human. And already she sensed that this small, defiant species might change the course of events far beyond Krythos 9. Elias didn't know what challenges awaited him, nor did he fully understand the weight of the alliance he had agreed to. But he knew one thing: he was no longer alone. And with that, the first spark of trust and partnership had been kindled between human and Empress, a bond that would be tested by fire, strategy, and the chaos of the galaxy itself. The corridors of the Empress's ship were alive with movement, glowing panels, and the hum of energy. Elias Varric had never seen anything like it. Everywhere he looked, aliens moved with perfect precision, performing tasks that required intelligence, discipline, and skill far beyond human capabilities. Yet despite their power, there was something he noticed immediately. They were predictable. Elias walked beside Thalrin, trying to keep pace with her long, measured stride. "So, I'm supposed to show them how humans think differently?" he asked, curiosity mixed with skepticism. "You will show them how humans think," Thalrin replied. "Not as a lesson, but as an advantage. Your species has qualities others do not. Creativity, unpredictability, courage, and the ability to adapt without hesitation. That is why you are valuable." Elias nodded slowly. He had survived Krythos 9 by relying on those exact qualities. Improvisation had been his greatest weapon, and now it seemed the galaxy might have need of it. "Your first mission begins soon," Thalrin continued, her eyes glowing faintly. "Observation alone will not be enough. You will participate and you will be tested. Failure is acceptable as long as you learn. That is the human way." Hours later, Elias found himself in a briefing room, surrounded by alien generals, engineers, and strategists. Holographic maps hovered in the air, showing star systems, fleet positions, and enemy movements. He recognized immediately the scale of the conflict. The Empress's empire was at war, and the stakes were immense. "You are the human," one of the generals said, his voice rough and mechanical. "We have heard of your exploits on Krythos 9, but humans are small, weak, and fragile. How can you contribute to this war?" Elias felt a flash of defiance. "I survived alone on Krythos 9 against creatures built to hunt anything weaker than them. I used my mind, my instincts, and my courage to win. That's what humans do. We adapt, improvise, and find a way." The general raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Words do not win wars. Actions do." "Then let me show you," Elias replied, his voice steady. "Give me the mission, let me prove it." Thalrin watched silently, her expression unreadable. After a moment she spoke. "Very well, observe, participate, and act. Your ingenuity will be your weapon. Use it wisely." The mission was to infiltrate a supply station held by a rival alien faction on a remote asteroid. The station was heavily guarded, equipped with automated defenses and advanced surveillance systems. The Empress's generals had already analyzed the plan, but Elias was given freedom to make suggestions, or take unconventional actions as he saw fit. As the ship approached the asteroid, Elias studied the holographic map. The defenses were formidable: energy barriers, automated turrets, and patrol drones. Most alien soldiers would follow the standard procedure, attacking head-on or using brute force. Elias frowned. That approach would trigger every alarm and lead to heavy casualties. Instead, he suggested a different approach. "We go in quiet," he said, pointing to narrow maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the station. "They're not monitored closely, and we can avoid most patrols. I'll guide a small team through, disable the critical systems, and open the main gate from inside. Minimal exposure, maximum effect." The generals murmured among themselves, skeptical. Thalrin regarded him silently, her eyes narrowing, as if evaluating his reasoning. "You are confident in this plan?" she asked. "Yes," Elias said. "It works if we move carefully and adapt to surprises. I've done this kind of thing before." Thalrin nodded once. "Very well, you lead the way. But remember, improvisation is valuable, but reckless improvisation is dangerous." Elias smiled faintly. "Understood." The mission began. Elias moved with a small strike team through the maintenance tunnels, his heart beating in rhythm with his careful footsteps. The hum of alien machinery echoed around them, but the patrols were sparse. He led the team past laser grids, motion sensors, and security cameras, using his instincts to avoid detection. When they reached a control panel, Elias paused. He studied the alien interface, recognizing patterns in the symbols that allowed him to bypass the security sequence. His hands moved quickly, improvising with minimal tools. Lights blinked green, and the automated defenses temporarily shut down. The team moved swiftly through the corridors, opening gates and disabling alarms without triggering any alerts. Then, they reached the central energy core, a massive chamber where the station's power and defenses were controlled. Drones swarmed the area, far more numerous than anyone had expected. Standard tactics would have led to a brutal firefight, but Elias thought differently. He scanned the room. noting the structural weaknesses, the drone patrol paths, and the energy conduits running along the walls. Using a combination of small explosives and calculated diversions, he created a series of controlled disturbances that drew the drones away from the core. The team moved in, disabling critical systems with minimal combat. When the final alarm triggered, it was too late. The defenses were already compromised, and the main gate opened. Thalrin's fleet, waiting in orbit, poured through the now accessible station. The enemy was caught off guard, overwhelmed not by brute force but by human ingenuity. Back on the ship, Thalrin watched the mission unfold through the command deck's viewport. She allowed herself a rare smile. "Humans are fascinating," she murmured. "Even in a galaxy that underestimates them, they find a way." Ilias returned to the ship, exhausted but exhilarated. He had succeeded where brute strength would have failed. The alien generals, once skeptical, now regarded him with a mixture of awe and respect. He realized something vital. Humans had an edge not because of power, but because of creativity and adaptability. One of the generals approached him, still hesitant. "You acted differently than we expected. Perhaps there is value in human thinking." Ilias nodded. "Sometimes the unpredictable choice is the right choice. You can't always calculate everything. You have to think, adapt, and take risks." Thalrin placed a hand on his shoulder. "You understand something fundamental, human. Power alone does not win wars. Insight, creativity, and courage, these are as important, sometimes more so. You have shown your worth today." Ilias felt a surge of pride, tempered by humility. He had survived Krythos 9. He had been saved by a being far beyond his comprehension, and now he had proven that humans could influence events on a galactic scale. The rest of the night was spent debriefing, analyzing, and planning for the next phase. Ilias realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, and filled with adversaries who underestimated humans at their peril. And now he was part of a force that could change the course of conflicts, not because of sheer power, but because humans thought differently. Thalrin observed him quietly during the debrief. "Do not let this success breed arrogance," she said. "The galaxy is vast. There are forces far greater than you have faced. But know this, your species has something I have rarely seen, adaptability under pressure. That quality can change outcomes." Ilias nodded. "I understand, and I'll keep learning." "You will," she replied, her gaze steady. "And I will continue to observe. Humans are unpredictable, but that unpredictability is a gift. Use it wisely." As Ilias lay in his quarters later, staring at the stars beyond the ship's hull, he thought about what he had accomplished. He had survived impossible odds on a barren planet, been saved by the Empress herself, and now participated in a mission that even the most experienced alien strategists had doubted. He realized something profound. Humans were underestimated because they were seen as weak. But human creativity, courage, and adaptability were unmatched. Where aliens relied on calculations, humans relied on intuition. Where aliens followed protocol, humans improvised. That was the edge, the human edge. And as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, Ilias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was dangerous, filled with enemies and unknown threats. But humans had a place here, not as mere survivors, but as game changers. Ilias smiled faintly. The journey was just beginning, and somewhere in the command deck, Thalrin watched, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. She had seen the human edge in action. She knew that humans, though fragile in appearance, carried a force that could alter the fate of entire star systems. And she would ensure that Ilias, and perhaps his species, had the chance to prove it again and again. For now, the mission was complete, the supply station secured, and a small spark of trust had formed between human and Empress. But the galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. And Ilias Varric, armed with nothing but courage, ingenuity, and determination, was ready to meet them head-on. The Empress's flagship glided silently through the dark expanse of space, its hull reflecting the distant light of dying stars. Inside, Ilias Varric moved cautiously, his senses alert. The success of the previous mission had earned him a place on the ship's bridge, but it also came with the weight of responsibility. Every choice he made could ripple across the galaxy. Thalrin, the alien Empress, stood at the center of the command deck, her presence commanding every gaze. Aliens of countless species moved around her with perfect precision, yet even in this well-ordered environment, Ilias sensed an undercurrent of tension. Something was not right. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked one of the officers, a tall, armored alien with luminescent markings along his arms. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Yes, there are murmurs, dissent within the ranks. Some question the Empress's judgment." "Some do not trust her fascination with you, human," Elias frowned. "They don't trust me," the officer shook his head. "Not you personally, but they see your presence as a risk. Some believe it undermines their loyalty to the Empress. Others have always craved power." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He had survived Krythos 9 and led successful missions, but this was different. Betrayal was not a creature to fight head-on. It was invisible, silent, and deadly. Thalrin's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Prepare for inspection. The traitors will reveal themselves soon." The room fell silent. Elias didn't fully understand the words, but the tension was palpable. The Empress's intuition was sharp. She sensed the unrest, the conspiracies lurking in the shadows. And now it was up to him to navigate a danger unlike any battlefield he had faced before. Hours later, the attack began. Sirens blared, red lights flashing as sections of the ship locked down. Alien soldiers turned on their comrades, revealing hidden weapons and seizing control of strategic systems. The coup had begun. Elias ducked behind a console as laser blasts cut through the air. The human's instincts kicked in: observe, adapt, survive. He needed to understand the layout of the ship, the positions of the traitors, and the best way to protect the Empress. Thalrin moved calmly amid the chaos, her eyes glowing as she assessed the situation. Elias noticed something remarkable. She did not panic. She had authority, strategy, and precision in every motion, but even she could not reach every point at once. That was where he came in. He sprinted down a corridor, dodging automated turrets and rogue soldiers. Using his understanding of human improvisation, he created diversions, rerouted security systems, and blocked corridors to slow the traitors' advance. Each move bought precious time for Thalrin and loyal forces to regroup. One of the traitors, a high-ranking general with a serpent-like form, blocked Elias' path. His eyes glinted with malice. "You should not have come here, human," he hissed, raising a weapon designed to cut through the strongest armor. Elias' mind raced. The weapon fired a beam, and he barely rolled out of the way, sparks flying from the console he had ducked behind. He looked around and grabbed a small energy conduit, ripping it from the wall. He redirected the power toward the floor, creating a temporary shock barrier that stunned the general and slowed his advance. "You think you're clever," the general snarled, "but humans are fragile and weak." Elias smirked despite the danger. "Fragile, maybe weak. Never humans survive because we think differently. We improvise. And right now, that's going to save your life if you're lucky." The general lunged, but Elias had already anticipated the move. Using a combination of agility and clever placement of objects around the corridor, he forced the traitor back, buying enough time for a loyal squad to arrive and restrain him. Breathing heavily, Elias realized that his human creativity, his ability to improvise under pressure, was exactly what was needed. The aliens' strict adherence to rules and strategy left gaps that he could exploit, turning their strength into an advantage. He moved to the central command deck, where Thalrin was holding her ground against multiple traitors. Her power radiated outward, energy blasts fending off attackers with precision. Yet she was outnumbered, and even her strength could not cover every angle. Elias positioned himself near the side corridors, using the ship's layout to flank the rebels and intercept them before they reached her. One by one, Elias' improvisation and quick thinking allowed the Empress to regain control. He rerouted power to create temporary shields, used the environment to slow enemy movement, and coordinated with loyal soldiers who had been initially trapped. Every move showcased the unpredictability that Thalrin had admired from humans, the ability to turn chaos into strategy. Finally, the last of the traitors confronted them. The high-ranking General Elias had fought earlier regrouped and charged toward the Empress. Elias acted instinctively. He grabbed a nearby control panel and sent a surge of energy down the corridor, disabling the general's weapon and knocking him off balance. Thalrin moved with deadly precision, restraining the rebel without lethal force. The battle was over. The ship was secure and the traitors were contained. Elias stood panting, sweat dripping down his face as Thalrin regarded him with an unreadable expression. "You have proven something today," she said finally. "Your species, humans, have a strength unlike any other." Not in muscle, not in raw power, but in courage, improvisation, and resilience. You adapted when others would have failed. You changed the outcome of this conflict. Elias shook his head. I was just doing what I had to. I didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. Thalrin's eyes glowed brighter. That is precisely why humans survive. Most creatures follow rules and logic. Humans defy them when necessary. That unpredictability is invaluable. The generals who had doubted him earlier now looked at Elias with respect. One approached cautiously. You are not what we expected. Perhaps humans are more than we assumed. Elias nodded. Sometimes being underestimated is an advantage. It lets you act when others are frozen by expectations. Thalrin stepped closer, placing a hand on Elias' shoulder. You understand something fundamental. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Strength alone is not enough. Insight, courage, and creativity, these define survival. You have shown that humans are capable of all three. Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had survived Krythos 9, led successful missions, and now helped repel a coup that threatened the Empress herself. For all his fears and doubts, he had proven that human ingenuity mattered, even among the stars. But the experience left him thoughtful. Betrayal was not like a scavenger on Krythos 9. It was subtle, hidden, and required vigilance beyond physical skill. He realized that surviving in the galaxy meant more than fighting. It meant understanding politics, loyalty, and strategy in ways humans had not yet encountered. That night, Elias stood at a viewport, looking out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched endlessly, full of unknown threats, possibilities, and challenges. He thought of Thalrin, her calm strength, and her trust in him. She had seen something in humans that few others had, something he was only beginning to understand himself. Somewhere deep inside, Elias felt a spark of purpose. Humans had always survived against impossible odds on fragile worlds. Now they had a chance to shape events on a galactic scale. And he would be at the forefront, proving that courage, creativity, and adaptability could triumph even when the odds were stacked against them. Thalrin observed him silently from behind, her luminous eyes reflecting the distant stars. She had seen many creatures in her long reign, but humans were different. They were small, fragile, and seemingly insignificant, but within them burned a spark that could alter the course of entire civilizations. Elias didn't fully understand the future, but he knew this. Humans had earned their place among the stars, and as long as he lived, he would continue to fight, adapt, and survive. The galaxy was dangerous, yes, but humans had always found a way. For the first time, he felt a deep connection to something larger than himself, something beyond mere survival. He was part of a force that could shape the fate of worlds, not through brute strength, but through ingenuity, courage, and resilience. The human edge that no alien, no matter how powerful, could fully predict or contain. And somewhere in the silent corridors of the Empress's ship, a small voice whispered the truth he had always known. Humans survived, humans endured, and humans, against all odds, could change the stars themselves. The Empress's fleet moved through the void of space with silent precision, like a living organism of light and steel. Elias Varric stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the holographic display that showed enemy fleets scattered across several star systems. The scale of the conflict was staggering, ships numbering in the hundreds, worlds at stake, and strategies that spanned light years. Despite the overwhelming complexity, Elias felt a thrill. Humans thrived in chaos. He had survived Krythos 9 against impossible odds, fought off scavengers, and repelled a coup aboard this very ship. Now, in the midst of a galactic war, he had the chance to prove that human ingenuity could make a difference on a scale few had ever imagined. Thalrin approached silently, her glowing eyes reflecting the distant stars. They underestimate you, she said, her voice calm and steady. Your presence confounds them, human. Even your allies watch with curiosity. Humans are unpredictable, and that is a gift. Elias nodded. I'm ready to prove it again. Show them what humans can do. The Empress's holographic display highlighted the target, a heavily fortified enemy stronghold on a planet with hostile terrain. Standard protocols called for a full assault, overwhelming firepower, and coordinated fleet maneuvers. Most alien strategists would follow these plans to the letter, but Elias saw the gaps, the rigidity, the assumptions, the predictable patterns that left vulnerabilities. I have an idea, he said, pointing at the display. Instead of attacking head-on, we divide the fleet into smaller units. Each unit creates a distraction at different points, while a strike team infiltrates the planet to disable key defenses. Once the defenses fall, the main fleet can move in with minimal resistance. The generals murmured among themselves. Some were skeptical, unwilling to deviate from protocol. "It is risky," one said. "A human plan could lead to disaster." Thalrin's gaze, calm and piercing, fell on Elia's. "Risk is inherent in innovation. Humans understand it intuitively. Proceed if you believe it will succeed." Elias took a deep breath. "I do." The plan was set into motion. The fleet moved in precise formation, smaller squadrons creating diversions across the planet's orbit. Enemy sensors detected movement and prepared to respond, but the chaos spread across multiple fronts. Meanwhile, Elias led the strike team aboard a smaller vessel, descending into the planet's atmosphere. The terrain below was harsh, jagged cliffs, narrow valleys, and unstable ridges. Enemy forces were entrenched, prepared for an attack that would follow conventional tactics. Elias smiled faintly. "Conventional isn't going to work," he muttered. He led the team through narrow paths, using natural cover to avoid detection. Automated turrets scanned the sky, but Elias' human intuition predicted their patterns. He guided the team with precise timing, moving through gaps, dodging laser sweeps, and improvising when unexpected obstacles appeared. At the enemy's main defense hub, Elias paused. The systems were complex, a mesh of sensors, energy shields, and automated drones. Standard protocols would call for heavy bombardment, destroy the defenses, and hope the strike team survived. Elias studied the layout. Every system had a vulnerability, a point of weakness that could be exploited without brute force. "Here's the plan," he whispered to his team. "We hack the main console, loop the sensors, and disable the shields from the inside. Drones will be confused, and their weapons will misfire. It's risky, but it's our only chance to avoid heavy casualties." The team nodded, trusting his judgment. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were clever, adaptable, and courageous. Elias led them forward, bypassing guards, avoiding detection, and improvising when unexpected patrols appeared. With steady hands and sharp instincts, he manipulated the alien systems, creating a chain reaction that disrupted the enemy's defenses. Back above, the Empress's fleet waited, ready to strike. As Elias disabled the final energy nodes, the orbital ships moved in. Enemy turrets malfunctioned, defensive shields flickered, and chaos erupted among the enemy forces. The strike team had succeeded with minimal casualties, thanks to human ingenuity. On the bridge of the flagship, Thalrin observed the unfolding battle. Her eyes glowed faintly as she nodded. "Humans are remarkable," she murmured. "Even in a galaxy that underestimates them, they find a way." Elias returned to the flagship after the mission, exhausted but exhilarated. He had done more than survive. He had inspired the alien soldiers around him. Many who had doubted humans now regarded him with awe. They had seen firsthand that one human mind, thinking differently, could alter the outcome of a battle that hundreds of aliens would have struggled to win. One of the generals approached cautiously. "Your strategy, it was unexpected, effective." "Perhaps there is more value in humans than we assumed." Elias shrugged. "Humans survive by adapting. We see opportunities where others see obstacles. We take risks when necessary and act quickly when others hesitate. That's why we endure." Thalrin placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm despite the metallic sheen of her skin. "You have shown the human spark, Elias. It is not just strength or skill. It is ingenuity, courage, and the ability to act when others cannot. That spark, it inspires loyalty, even among those who do not understand it." Elias nodded, feeling a swell of pride. He had always relied on instinct and creativity to survive. Now those same qualities had saved lives on a planetary scale. He realized something profound. Humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because they were unpredictable. And unpredictability could be the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The next day, the Empress summoned him to her personal chamber. "You have proven your value," she said, her eyes glowing softly. "But there is more to this war than battles. There is diplomacy, strategy, and understanding the motives of allies and enemies alike. Humans have insight others lack. Your perspective will be invaluable." Elias felt a sense of responsibility settle over him. Survival was no longer just about staying alive. It was about contributing, influencing, and leading in ways that only humans could. He had been saved by the Empress, yes, but now he had the chance to repay that trust with action, creativity, and courage. You will lead small strike teams, advise on tactics, and act when unconventional solutions are needed, Thalrin continued. I will observe, guide, and intervene if necessary, but your spark, the human spark, will be the catalyst for success. Elias straightened, determination shining in his eyes. I won't let you down, humans survive. And we can adapt, improvise, and overcome anything, even in the stars. Thalrin's gaze softened, a rare expression for the Empress. That is why I saved you. That is why I observe you. The galaxy will underestimate humans, Elias, but they will learn as they witness your actions that survival and victory are not determined by size or strength, but by creativity, courage, and the willingness to act when others hesitate. Over the next several days, Elias' influence grew. Alien soldiers began to trust his suggestions. Generals consulted him on unconventional tactics, and his human intuition repeatedly turned dire situations into victories. He became a symbol, not only of human ingenuity, but of hope for those who faced impossible odds. Elias understood that the galaxy was dangerous, that enemies would come, and that challenges would grow. But he also understood something more important. Humans had an edge that could not be calculated, predicted, or contained. That edge was adaptability, courage, and the spark to act when the universe expected failure. And somewhere in the observation deck above, Thalrin watched. She had seen countless species rise and fall, witnessed empires crumble, and battles won through sheer power. But humans were different. Fragile, yes, but within them burned a spark that could ignite entire star systems. Elias looked out at the stars beyond the ship, feeling the weight of responsibility, the thrill of possibility, and the fire of determination. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but humans, against all odds, could endure, inspire, and change the course of events. For the first time, he truly understood the gift he carried. It was not strength. It was not power. It was the human spark, the unpredictable, creative, courageous force that no alien, no matter how advanced, could fully anticipate. And as the fleet moved toward the next mission, Elias Varric felt ready. He would fight, he would inspire, and he would prove that humanity, fragile but clever, small but resourceful, had a place among the stars. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. Now they would see the truth. The stars stretched endlessly before the flagship as it moved toward the next conflict zone, the glow of distant suns reflecting off its sleek hull. Elias Varric stood on the bridge, his eyes scanning the holographic display of the galaxy ahead. Every system, every fleet, every planet seemed alive with danger and possibility. But Elias no longer felt fear. He felt purpose. He was no longer just a human struggling to survive. He was a participant in something far greater, a force that could shape the fate of entire star systems. Thalrin appeared at his side, her presence calm yet commanding. Her luminous eyes scanned the display, noting the patterns of enemy fleets and the disposition of allies. This will be your greatest challenge yet, she said. The enemy has learned from past encounters. They anticipate predictable strategies. You must act differently. Elias nodded. Then I'll act human. A faint smile touched the Empress's lips. Precisely. Humans survive because they think differently, and now the galaxy watches. The target was a remote planet, rich in resources and strategically vital. The enemy had fortified it with orbital weapons, planetary defenses, and mobile strike units. Conventional tactics would lead to a protracted battle with heavy casualties. Elias studied the layout, the fleet positions, and the terrain. He saw patterns that the alien generals had missed, gaps that could be exploited, and opportunities for an approach that defied expectations. Divide the fleet into 3 groups, Elias suggested, pointing at the display. One creates a distraction in orbit. Another provides artillery cover from a distance, and a small strike team lands on the surface to disable key defenses. If we time it right, the enemy will never know what hit them. Murmurs rose among the generals. It is unorthodox, one said. Thalrin's gaze rested on Elias. Unorthodox is necessary. Humans understand chaos. Use it. The plan set, the fleet moved into position. Orbital squadrons engaged the enemy in a dazzling display of firepower and maneuvering, drawing attention away from the strike team descending to the planet's surface. Elias led the team, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived impossible odds countless times before. The terrain was treacherous. Jagged cliffs, dense forests, and deep canyons concealed enemy patrols and automated defenses. But Elia's human intuition guided them. He anticipated patrol routes, improvised diversions, and manipulated the environment to their advantage. Each step, each decision was a calculated risk, one that could mean the difference between victory and failure. They reached the first defense hub, a massive structure bristling with energy cannons. Elia studied the layout, identifying a blind spot in the automated targeting systems. "Here," he whispered. "We go in, disable the generators, and loop the sensors. The rest will follow." His team moved with precision, following his lead. Laser blasts hissed past them, and energy barriers flickered as they bypassed automated defenses. Elia's improvised tools from the environment, twisted metal, broken conduits, and even small energy cores to manipulate the systems. Within moments, the hub was compromised, its defenses offline. As they progressed, Elias realized something extraordinary. Alien soldiers, watching from nearby positions, began to mimic his tactics. They improvised where they had been rigid, adapted where they had been predictable. The spark of human creativity was contagious. What had begun as one human's ingenuity was now spreading among the ranks, inspiring others to think differently, to act boldly, and to trust intuition as much as protocol. Thalrin observed the unfolding battle from orbit. Her luminous eyes reflected the chaos below, but also the pattern emerging from it. "The human spark, it spreads," she murmured. "It inspires, it empowers, it changes the outcome of conflict itself." The strike team reached the central command center, where the enemy's leadership had gathered. Elias assessed the situation. Conventional tactics would lead to prolonged engagement and heavy casualties. Instead, he devised a subtle, precise strike that used the environment, timing, and distraction to neutralize the enemy without unnecessary loss. He moved swiftly, improvising at every step. Energy conduits redirected power, holographic panels misled enemy sensors, and small controlled detonations disoriented guards. Within moments, the command center was in their control. The enemy leadership surrendered, their defenses compromised, and the planet's fate was secured. Back in orbit, the fleet adjusted to the new situation, taking advantage of the sudden collapse of enemy defenses. The battle was won, not through brute force alone, but through strategy, creativity, and the human spark that had guided every move. Elias returned to the flagship, exhausted but exhilarated. Alien generals approached him, their expressions a mixture of awe and respect. "We underestimated humans," one admitted. "Your methods, they are unpredictable, effective. You have changed the outcome of this conflict." Elias shook his head. "Humans survive by adapting, improvising, and acting when others hesitate. That's all. Anyone could do it if they dared to think differently." Thalrin placed a hand on his shoulder, her metallic skin cool against his own. "Not anyone," she said softly. "You have shown courage, ingenuity, and resilience. That is rare. That is what makes humans remarkable." For a moment, Elias felt a sense of quiet pride. He had survived Krythos 9, led missions across planets, repelled a coup, and now influenced the outcome of battles that could change the galaxy. But more than that, he realized something deeper. Humans had earned their place among the stars, not through power alone, but through courage, adaptability, and the spark that inspired others to act. Thalrin regarded him silently, her glowing eyes reflecting the distant stars. "You and your species, you carry something the galaxy often underestimates. Strength alone is not enough. Insight, creativity, courage, these are the tools of true influence. You have shown them today." Elias nodded. "I've learned a lot. Not just about the galaxy, but about humans. About what we can do when we survive, when we adapt, when we refuse to give up." "Exactly," Thalrin said. "And now your actions have forged a bond, not just between us, but between humans and the Empire. Your presence has inspired loyalty, trust, and hope. That is something few beings achieve." The weight of her words settled over Elias. He had begun as a lone human fighting to survive on a barren planet. Now he stood at the center of a galaxy-wide alliance, his ingenuity and courage recognized by one of the most powerful beings in the universe. And he understood something essential. Survival was not just about staying alive. It was about influencing, inspiring, and shaping the future. In the days that followed, the alliance between humans and the Empress's forces grew stronger. Alien soldiers who had doubted humans now sought Elias' advice. Generals incorporated his unconventional strategies into their plans, and the Empress herself observed with interest and approval, recognizing that the unpredictable spark of humanity had become a cornerstone of their strength. Elias stood once more at the viewport, looking out at the galaxy that stretched endlessly before him. The stars were bright, distant, and full of promise. He thought of Krythos 9, the scavengers, the coup, and the battles that had tested him. Every challenge had shaped him, every danger had honed his instincts, and every risk had revealed the edge that humans possessed. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humans had proven they could endure, inspire, and change events in ways no alien could fully anticipate. Elias smiled faintly, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the thrill of possibility. Thalrin appeared silently beside him. "You understand now, do you?" she asked. "Humans are not just survivors. You are catalysts. You inspire, you adapt, and you endure." "That spark, it is yours to wield." Elias nodded. "I understand, and I'll use it wisely. Humans survive, yes, but we also influence, inspire, and endure in ways no one expects." The Empress's eyes glowed softly, a rare warmth in her expression. "Then we are aligned. Together we will face the galaxy, and together we will show that humans, fragile though you appear, have a power that can change the course of stars." For the first time, Elias felt the full weight and wonder of his journey. From a lone survivor on a barren planet to a symbol of human ingenuity and courage in the galaxy, his path had been extraordinary. He had proven that survival was not just about strength, but about adaptability, courage, and creativity, the human spark that no force could extinguish. And as the flagship moved forward into the unknown, Elias Varric understood the truth he had always known deep within himself. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that was their greatest advantage. Their spark, their courage, and their creativity would light the path through the stars, leaving an impact no alien empire could ignore. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and enemies, but Elias was ready. Not as a mere survivor, but as a human who had fought, endured, and inspired. And somewhere in the observation deck above, Thalrin watched, knowing that she had witnessed something extraordinary. A bond beyond worlds, a partnership forged in courage and ingenuity, and the undeniable truth that humanity, fragile, clever, and brave, could change the fate of the galaxy. Elias Varric looked out at the stars, the endless possibilities before him, and smiled. The journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, but humans, he had learned, would endure. They would adapt. They would inspire, and together they would light the path across the stars.